All right, joining me for this episode is Andrew Van Timmeren, call sign Scar. So the first question that my viewers will always ask, Scar, is how did you get your call sign?
Suffice it to say, it involves a flight at Nellis, which most good stories should involve high-end training at the Nellis Test and Training Range, bad weather, and a number of jets falling apart maintenance-wise. So SCAR is an acronym. I'll hold what it means to myself. But again, Nellis, Las Vegas, high end training, all goodness all around.
Okay, so it's an acronym call sign,
That's exactly right.
like Moto, Master of the Obvious, things like that.
Yeah, that's exactly
So
how it is. All
okay,
and they have good stories. That's right.
fair enough, fair enough. And we'll let the viewer just figure out what the acronym actually is.
There you go.
So tell us a little bit about your background. What was your path to the Raptor?
Grew up in West Michigan, Grand Rapids area. Not a whole lot of military impact with my family. Didn't grow up in a heavy military area. Just woke up one morning, no kidding, in the 7th grade and was like, I want to go fly jets. And so, what is the path to go do that? I didn't know anybody who went this path, but sounds like the Air Force Academy is a reasonable way to go do this. And so, worked hard in school, got into the Air Force Academy, did well enough at the academy to get a pilot slot, and then was able to go to Vance Air Force Base, good old Enid, Oklahoma, where I spent a year flying there, went from the T6 to T38, and then was fortunate enough to drop Raptors at that point. So that was in 2011 is when I joined the Raptor community, and haven't looked back since.
Think how much technology has changed in the last 20 years. So why are so many of us carrying the same types of wallets that our dads used? The Ridge wallet expands to hold up to 12 cards plus room for cash, all while remaining as slim as possible. Compare the Ridge wallet to your old bulky wallet. You know, the one chiropractors everywhere are happy you're still using. The Ridge wallet comes in more than 30 colors and styles, including carbon fiber, burnt titanium, forged ember, and burnt Damascus. Mine is burnt titanium, and the durable material means each wallet comes with a lifetime warranty. Ridge wallets are also designed with RFID blocking materials that protects you from digital pickpocketers, and they feature optional AirTag attachments so you'll never lose your wallet again. The Ridge team is so confident in this wallet that they'll let you test drive it for 99 days, and you can send it back for a full refund if you don't love it. The bottom line is Ridge has redefined the wallet, and they're making Father's Day gifting easy with one of their biggest sales of the year. Use my exclusive link at ridge.com/mooch for 40% off through June 15th. That's ridge.com/mooch.
The first time I heard what the Raptor was for was from a guy who was an Academy classmate of mine who went on to be the commander of the Naval Air Systems Command, a guy named Decoy Dunaway, Hornet pilot. So he was working IESA radar for the brand new Super Hornet, which was an ACAT-1D program within an ACAT-1D program. And again, we get into the procurement nerding out here.
That's right.
But in any case, the way that Decoy put it to me, he said, the F-35 is the truck, the F-22 is the Ferrari. So that was the original concept for the Air Force of how they were going to use those two airplanes together. That is not at all how it played out in terms of price per aircraft and in terms of roles and missions. So talk to us about the history of the F-22, and then we'll get into your specific experience in the airplane.
The aircraft is designed for the air-to-air role. It is hyper designed and optimized for that. And that is actually born out of history and lessons learned dating all the way back to the origination of air combat. So when you think about the air domain, you are not just fighting against the other guy in his jet or in his biplane with his dude who's shooting at you. You're also working against the integrated air defense system, the IADS. Those are the surface-to-air missile systems. Those are the AAA batteries. It all the way goes down to the guys you see at Ukraine in Ukraine right now with those shoulder-mounted missiles, those man-pads. You have a whole ecosystem of things on the ground that you have to deter, as well as be survivable against the things that are flying around in the air. As we realized as we got into Vietnam, that overlapping coverage of radar was becoming more and more of a challenge. You had to get further and further away in order to remain survivable against the surface-to-air capabilities, but also against those air intercept radars that are flying around and also trying to search for you, because the adversary's ability to reach out and touch you is also increasing through their missile capabilities. So you have to kill and survive in a highly contested, overlapping RF coverage area. And at the time, the F-4 was the workhorse. The F-105 was a major workhorse. We're talking in the 60s and 70s and getting into the 80s. The F-16A model is just coming online, as well as the F-15A model is also just coming online. But those are not survivable in this highly contested environment, especially at the time of the design of the Raptor. The Bear, Russia, the USSR was our principal threat. And so what did we have to do? We have to come up with an aircraft design and technology that increases our ability to MES-pen. What I mean by that is missile engagement zone penetrate against the air capability and the ground capabilities of our adversaries. And so that brought on the need for stealth. There was a program called Have Blue that turned into F-117. That was a DARPA project. But then along that time as well was the ATF, or the Advanced Tactical Fighter Program, which then created the YF-22 and the YF-23. The YF-22 built by Lockheed Martin, and then the YF-23 built by Northrop Grumman. That was the competition of prototype aircraft, and ultimately Lockheed Martin was selected in the 90s to build out the Raptor, and then the Raptor itself became IOC, I believe, in 2005 out of Langley Air Force Base, and then ultimately has proliferated across a number of bases down in Florida, Virginia, Alaska, Hawaii, and then we are on call 24/7 all around the world.
Was the original program of record to replace the F-15Cs 1-for-1 with F-22s? Was that the original buy?
I think that was part of the original game plan. You want to have a mix of high-low. A high-low mix is what it's called. So you want to have some exquisite capabilities on one end of the spectrum, but you maybe want to have less than exquisite capabilities. It's not to say that the C model Eagle is not a great aircraft. It really is. It is the world's greatest distributor of MiG parts, is what they will tell you. But they are not survivable as a giant radar reflector out there. And so the Raptor program originally had a buy of, I believe, 700 that was ultimately curtailed to the high 300s. And then it was Secretary Gates in the late 2000s who stopped the buy at 196, of which I think we have 180 something of them flying. The exact numbers based on maintenance and mishaps and whatnot change. But yeah, we were going to have closer to 1,000 than not was the original acquisition plan for the Raptor. And you know, I'm not going to get after leadership decisions or disparage thought processes there. Ultimately, when Secretary Gates made the decision to curtail the buy of the Raptor, he had guys on the ground dying from IEDs, and in Iraq and Afghanistan, and he had this MRAP program that needed money, and he had this exquisite platform that we hope to actually never use in a high-end fight. And so we had to, you know, pay for today, maybe at the sacrifice of tomorrow. And so that's what we're living with right now.
So that's the calculus that is always going on. Paco, our good friend Paco, and I have talked about some of the give take programmatically over the years, and including what Secretary Gates's calculus was based on this asymmetric threat that we faced for about 20 years, right? The Taliban didn't have an air force. Al-Qaeda didn't have an air force. ISIS didn't have an air force. And so this is what you get. So what was the cost per copy at the sort of high end of the production of the F-22?
So in production, the last aircraft rolling off the line were just under $150 million a copy. That was inclusive of the Block 20 capabilities, and we could get into some of those as much as I can on where the blocks are differentiated. But Yeah, is about $130 million. My understanding was the last aircraft that rolled off the line. You can look back in the news history on the original copies, and again, the exact same. The arguments in the history here is cyclical, and so this overwhelming, unobtainium price of the early Raptor is the exact same thing we heard about the B2. It's the exact same thing we're hearing about the F-35. It's also what we're hearing about the Ford class carriers. But then as you get into production, you get efficiencies, you get bulk volume pricing on sub-supplier purchases and subcomponents, and you can bring those prices down.
So you're a Raptor baby. You have you ever flown the Eagle?
No, I went straight from pilot training into the Raptor.
Okay, so let's do the Pepsi challenge in turn. Let's start with dogfighting, air combat maneuvering. What advantages does the Raptor have over a fourth gen airplane?
Let's talk about the maneuverability provided by the flight control system, but then also through the immense power of 2x F-119 engines by Pratt & Whitney equipped with thrust vectoring. So if you ever get close to a Raptor, the flight control surfaces are massive. The horizontal stabs are, I call them barn doors, because they are huge. And when you get this amount of metal canted even just a couple of degrees, the amount of force that they generate is immense. And then you also have these canted vertical tails equipped with reasonably sized rudders that are able to create an incredible amount of yaw, again, because of the size and the degree at which they are able to maneuver. You also have flaperons and ailerons, not just one or the other. You have both, and both of those are used at all speeds in alpha limits. You combine that with an incredible flight control software. So for people who may not have seen the Raptor cockpit, it is a side stick. It is not a center stick. It's very much like the F-16, but the stick moves about 3/4 of an inch all around. And you, as the operator, provide a request to the flight control software. So say I want to pitch my nose up. I'll pull slightly aft on the stick, and the nose will move up. And in a standard airplane like a Cessna, you may see the horizontal stab or horizontal tail move in order to move the nose up in a classic flight control way. But the flight control system in the Raptor is optimized based on a whole bunch of parameters, where you are in the air, your airspeed, your alpha, etc. And it will move whatever the control surface is to get you that result the quickest, which may not at all be the horizontal tail. And so it's an optimized software solution that gets you incredible performance that you wouldn't achieve if you were pulley and cable connected to individual flight control surfaces. And so combine all those amazing flight control surfaces with an amazing flight control software. And here's a hidden secret for the listeners out there, Mooch. The Raptor is way easier to fly than a Cessna. If you are a private pilot out there and you find yourself going, man, I am like, this Cessna is hard to fly, the Raptor is easier than that. The reason is, and this is why bad pilots like me, look at least mediocre, is because you have so much else going on in the Raptor outside of flying that you need to handle. And so flying needs to be easy or like brainless as much as it possibly can, because you have mission command, you have your flight in formation to worry about, you've got the overall battle space you may be managing, and so you've got a lot else going on. The one thing I haven't talked about here are the engines. So 2x F-119 engines by Pratt & Whitney, equipped with thrust vectoring. If you ever watch the air show, I would highly recommend you do that. I am still in awe every time I see the air show and what this jet is capable of doing. It seems to defy and create its own physics at times. But those thrust vectoring engines are able to kick the nose around in a way that other aircraft in our inventory are unable to do. So when you put 70,000 pounds of thrust, which is what you get when you're in AB, canted up or down, you swing around quick. And so the jet is capable of high degrees of maneuverability because of all those things put together.
So basically, wherever you point the nose, it can go there. And that's something that the Tomcat absolutely could not. We're managing all kinds of different parameters, angle of attack, airspeed, before digital flight control systems like you're talking about. In the later years, just like with any digital airplane, because the Tomcat was not a digital airplane until the end of its life. But if you put the stick somewhere you would move the appropriate flight control, like you're saying, like a Cessna. In the Raptor, if you put the stick somewhere at high alpha, HAL, the computer's kind of going, okay, I know what you meant to do, right? So it's not going to move flaperon or aileron. It'll move rudder or whatever to affect the outcome that the airplane knows better than you that will get you what you want. So that's amazing. And when you add thrust vectoring, like you said, you look at that air show and just watching the nose pivot and that pancake move, it's like, I don't know how you would ever beat a Raptor in a slow speed fight.
It is a unique capability that we love to exploit. I'll just say that. And so there are every aircraft has a game plan. And so some aircraft you want to maintain airspeed because you are a rate fight player. You get the greatest degrees per second out of your jet by maintaining moderate to high levels of energy. There are other aircraft who their game plan is, I can get to high degrees of alpha and remain maneuverable. And maybe that's a preferred game plan against a particular adversary. The Raptor mixes all that together. And so when you fly against another aircraft who wants to maintain high speed, turns out the Raptor can maintain extremely high speed and be maneuverable. You see an aircraft that goes into a high alpha regime, of course, in which I have to talk with my hands. So you get into a high alpha regime to scrub some knots and remain maneuverable. In the Raptor looks at that and goes, anything you can do, I can do maybe better. And so then it can also scrub knots. Again, that's where bad pilots like me can at least pretend to be mediocre, because it can get you into some bad situations, but also get you out of bad situations extremely quickly.
So what was the G limit of the Raptor?
9
Gs. Okay. So that's 2.5 Gs more than your average Navy airplane. The Tomcat, certainly. I think the Super Hornet can do 9, 8.
Yeah, I have been at 9 and accelerating. We call that the pain train, where you are pulling full aft on the stick, and you are G straining in order to save your life, and you are watching in the HUD that airspeed increase.
So what's the high end speed of the Raptor? How fast have you been in the Raptor?
Mach 2. So we're capable of surface ceiling of 60,000 feet. And Mach 2, let's talk about 60,000 feet first. So we are capable of going up that high, but we don't go any higher because we don't wear pressure suits. So I'm not saying the Raptor is incapable of going higher. What I am saying is that the pressure is so low once you get into higher altitude. If you had a rapid decompression, you could be above what's called, I believe, the Armstrong line, where fluids in liquids start to boil due to low pressure. That would also include you and your blood in the cockpit. And so that's why U2 or you see SR-71 or other pilots wear suits, is because of the low pressure of the atmosphere around them. We don't wear those. And so the jet is still highly capable, but we don't go above 60,000 feet. And then Mach 2 has to do with materials and other limits.
So let's come inside the airplane now. Let's talk about some of the systems. Glass cockpit. You don't have symbology in your visor. Or did you have some of that, or was it just a HUD airplane?
So the Raptor was built, designed, and still, as of 2023, is flown with the classic helmet with no JHEMIX. So JHEMIX is Joint Helmet Mounted Cueing System. That is the on the visor, quote unquote, augmented reality that is displayed to F-16, F-15, F-15E, Super Hornet, other pilots. The Raptor does not have that right now.
But you have a fully glass cockpit.
That's right.
MFDs, touch screens.
It is not touchscreen. So the F-35 led the way with the touchscreen. We have 4 big displays. So if you look at a picture of the cockpit, you'll have what's called the SD, or the situation display, that's in the center. It's the biggest display in the cockpit. And then you have the left, right, and center MFDs, which are called multifunction displays. Around those are buttons called OSBs, and you can select the various submenus within all those displays as you cycle through. Whether you want to manage your weapons, you want to manage your fuel, you want to see your engine situation, you want to see navigation data. All that can be controlled via all those displays.
So as you've already said, Raptor optimized for the air-to-air mission. Again, this is something that the Air Force can do in terms of specializing, A-10, F-16, F-15, Raptor, all very specialized airplanes. Navy has to start with, can it land on the aircraft carrier? And then we grow from there,
Yeah.
right? So What would your average weapons loadout be for your standard CAP mission? What would your weapons loadout be?
So in an air-to-air mission, where we're focused on an offensive counter-air or a defensive counter-air role, we're going to be what we call 6x2 by gun. And so 6 being AMRAAM, that's your AIM 120, 2 being your heat-seeking missiles, so those are the side weapons bays of the jet. And then we have 480 rounds of M61A2 GAU Gatling gun available to us. Those are 20 millimeter rounds, and those are all internally fed and kept in the jet.
Where did you deploy during your career?
So I've been to Europe and I've been to the Middle East. So in that time, spent some time fighting against ISIS. So in September, September 22nd, 2014 was the first combat mission, so to say, of the Raptor, where we took jets into Syria. You can find public information about this. And they dropped some bombs on a terrorist hideout or an ISIS hideout. I was there on the scene about a week later and relieved those guys. And then we immediately got into the ISIS fight. Again, this is in 2014 when they were actually taking land and we were losing that fight on the ground, and they were getting close to Baghdad, and we were flying in both Iraq and Syria for a few years. This was also before the Russians showed up in Syria, so it was a pretty permissive airspace with not a whole lot going on because the Syrian Air Force is, less than optimal, and so that was not a huge deal. But then we went to Europe, or that was a good time. It was a big deal, I should say, not a huge deal from a threat laydown at that time standpoint. And then went to Europe as well and flew with the Brits and a whole bunch of NATO and ally partners there in Europe. That was a blast integrating with them. And then obviously flown all around the country, whether it be Nellis or Edwards or other places as well.
So you're talking about dropping bombs in Syria. Was that sort of like the Tomcat, that the airplane was modified along the way to have air-to-ground capability, or was it always resident? And what sort of ordnance did they deliver?
The aircraft was originally known actually as the F-22. We dropped the A because, and you can find like old legacy toys or maybe knockoffs still available that say F-22. That's how you know it's still a knockoff. But in order to continue to get funding back in the early part of the program, you still had, even though we were optimized for air-to-air, to survive some cuts in the budget and whatnot, we had to say we could do air-to-ground. And so we are not your air-to-ground specialists. We are capable of doing air-to-ground, but we only carry the GBU-32, which is a 1,000-pound GPS-guided bomb, and then we carry the SDB, which is a 250-pound GPS-guided bomb. We do not have lasers. We do not have IR. Pods. We don't carry any of that. And so what we are capable of doing is bomb on coordinate. So we either generate coordinates or somebody passes us coordinates. We put those into our system. Those get layered into the weapon itself, and then we release.
So sort of poor man's strike capability.
Yeah, this is where I would rely on a Super Hornet to provide me with the coordinates and allow me to get all the glory. But what we can do is get high and fast and throw bombs a pretty long ways. And so there is a capability to use the air-to-ground ordnance on a Raptor to achieve effects still far away, based on the speed and altitudes we can fly and release at.
So did you have any symbology in the HUD, or was it just you injected a Latin long and that was all the weapon needed, then you just pickled it and it was off on its way?
That's a great question. We'll talk about how this happens. So we either generate coordinates or somebody passes coordinates. Let's pretend a Super Hornet has passed us coordinates. So north X or south X, east, west, and then we have to have an elevation as well for where the weapon has to impact. And so then I put that into what's called the ICP. That's where the numbers and other buttons are right in front of my face. That's directly underneath the HUD. You put in the lat long elevation and maybe some other weaponeering. Do you want it to fly in from the northeast? Do you want it to hit with a particular degree of impact angle? You can find all sorts of open source information about how we weaponeer bombs across the military. So now I put that in, and now on the big display in the dead center, again, that's called the SD or the situation display, I see something show up, which is called the LAR. It's called the Launch Acceptability Region.
Yeah, Tomcat had a LAR too. That's the
There you
same
go.
acronym we used. Yeah.
There you go. Perfect. I would fly my jet into the LAR, at which point I would hit the pickle button. The doors would open. The bomb would release. If you drop it outside of the LAR, you are not guaranteed to achieve the weaponeering that you put in. And so you want to make sure you get inside the LAR before you release.
So remind me, I should know this, but what is the status of the F-22's sunset program? Do you guys still flying it? Has it already gone away? How's that going to go?
The Raptor has a couple of different configurations out there flying as we speak. I'll get into those here super quick. So down at the schoolhouse at Eglin Air Force Base, used to be at Tyndall, I taught there. We have what are called the Block 20 jets. Those have some older, I want to say old, it's just their software and hardware is not at the Block 30 level. And there honestly, Mooch, isn't much that I can share about that other than it is still a highly capable jet, but there are some software and hardware upgrades that they don't have. And so those are down at the schoolhouse. And then once you get out into the combat air forces or the CAF, they have what are called Block 30 jets, and they have the ability to do a little bit more air to ground and other capabilities. There was a push last year to retire the Block 20 jets because of the maintenance, manpower, and funding it takes to keep those things flying. They are still incredibly capable airplanes. In a high-end fight, I would probably still want to rather be in that than a different airplane, a fourth-gen airplane, depending on the mission, certainly. But if we want to get close, the Raptor is still good, whether it's a Block 20 or Block 30. There was a push to have those retired last year. That was stopped by Congress. Air Force has put that back in as a retirement request for aircraft in the fiscal year 24's budget, which is being debated right now, and we'll see how that goes. Otherwise, the Raptor still has years ahead of it, especially as we await next generation aerial dominance, which I know you've done a video in the past. Shout out to your and Paco video on that. It was a great informative video, so thanks for doing that one. NGAD has to come online still, and so the Raptor isn't going anywhere.
So the other thing that viewers will remember in current events was the Raptor was used to shoot down the Chinese spy balloon. What did you hear from the Bubbas about that evolution? Was it a source of pride, or was it kind of like cringeworthy that they were using that way? What was their takeaway?
I will just say for the viewers who may, I know you have incredibly intelligent viewers, but I think it's worth being said that actually is a pretty non-standard and challenging problem. When you have something that's flying that high and is at the whim of the winds and is flying slower than we are used to, and is not putting off normal heat or radar signature, and it's again based on its altitude, you have to be flying at a reasonable speed in order to maintain your own maneuverability at the whim of the wind that changes its direction in the last mile. When they're flying that high, in order to maintain the maneuverability, you probably have to be above the Mach. I'll just say in a very general sense. That means your reaction time and the closure on this thing that suddenly could be going from 150 knots with the jet stream to 0 could change in an instant. And when your missile, both of them, both radar guided and heat seeking, are not necessarily optimized for this particular target, you have to come up with ways to ensure the success of that weapon and ensure the success of your intercept, which is something that we don't practice to. And so, yeah, we use a 5th gen fighter against something that could never shoot back, but it was a challenging problem, I'll just say, and unique and worthy of taking some time to mission plan, which they did. And so what it all comes down to, and I know you also understand this, Mooch, is much of the air war is won at the mission planning table. And when you can think about things at 1G in 0 knots, and collaborate openly with your friends and work through some of the challenges and contingencies and opportunities there, that allows you to not do that airborne under stress when you're dehydrated, under G, low fuel, things are shooting at you. And I'm not saying that was the case here, but successful mission planning meant that 1 shot, 1 kill on that balloon.
So the bottom line is it is not as easy as they made it look.
It shows and is a testament to my friends who, a friend of mine who took that shot, texted him that night, congratulating him, and all the guys who were airborne, and the people who were on the ground helping mission plan that, the maintainers who loaded the weapon appropriately, right? Because when you think about that shot, somebody had to pull that weapon, somebody had to put it on the jet, somebody had to plug it in appropriately. It had to ID and initialize on the jet. It had to not fail at launch, and it had to track all the way to impact. And so there are, it was in Top Gun 2, it's a 2 miracle solution. There are a whole bunch of miracles that take place in order for any missile to work and impact its target. And the fact that those guys did make it look easy was because of all the work they put in beforehand.
Well, Scar, you're a very busy man. Thank you for making us smart on the F-22, and we look forward to talking to you again very soon.
We should really appreciate the time to chat. Thanks a lot.
All right, that'll do it for this episode. If you're not already a subscriber, become one so you don't miss anything. If you'd like to help support the channel, please consider using the super thanks, the heart icon below, or become a patron at patreon.com/WardCarroll. And in the meantime, I look forward to talking to you again very soon.